The Sith are an interesting group in the Star Wars galaxy, especially in the expanded universe when you learn about their overall history. Same with the Mandalorians, but I'll get to that later. Um, they started off in the original trilogy just being the bad guys, these evil people. I don't even remember at the time if I knew. I don't remember them mentioning the Sith exactly, but it was just these were the enemies that Luke had to fight. They were the ones behind the Empire's leadership. And Sidious was probably the most evil one among them. Darth Vader was kind of evil, but technically was a good, kind of something of a good man buried beneath a veneer of evil. And those were the only two Sith we saw. And kind of as I've gone on to learn more about the Sith in the expanded universe, they are actually a fascinating group and also very, well, similarly to the Mandalorians, they feel very human, but for different reasons. And I thought I'd like to do a video on them. I'd also like to do a video on the Jedi, but that's more of a negative on them. And so yeah, let's talk about it. And the lore is just really rich with them. Like Star Wars has some pretty rich lore when it comes to a lot of the factions, and the Sith are no exception. They are top tier to read about, at least in my opinion. Anyway, like I said before, let's talk about it. The Sith, they actually started out similar to the Mandalorians. They were originally a alien species on Korriban. Or at least that's one half of their origin. The other half is um, there were a couple of schisms within the Jedi. Like this was after they stopped being the Jedi, who were more in the middle. They were more gray. The Jedi became more extreme. They had a very low tolerance for the dark side and anyone who practiced it or studied it. And after one of these schisms, they actually exiled some of the Dark Jedi into the unexplored region, which is where Korriban was, or I think that's where they were exiled to. But they ended up on Korriban, and so on the one hand, their name Sith comes from the species of the Korriban inhabitants, but on the other hand, their dark side and evil esqueness came from these people who practiced the dark side of the Force. That's more or less their backstory, and a lot of Sith can probably trace their lineage back to both these fallen Jedi and the Sith species. Well, not anymore, because I think their lineage would have been wiped out by now. Although there could be some people in the galaxy who are descendants of them and just don't know it. But the Sith species, I believe, is extinct now. But they have spiritual successors in the form of Darth Vader, Sidious, Talon. So they kind of continue that. And a lot of this, and from these two groups, a long lineage of a pain in the ass for the galaxy would form. But an interesting pain in the ass, nonetheless. Similarly to the Jedi, the Sith had a code of their own. It's more, well, me-centric. It is as follows. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. Now, this can normally be seen as a very selfish kind of code, but I disagree. It seems more of, well, it is selfish in a way, but I would prefer this to the Jedi, who are all about, well, they claim they're about serving others or the greater good of others, but yeah, no, they are pricks. At least with the Sith, you know where you stand with them, but that's a rant for another slide. And it's all about the development of the person, each individual Sith, is how I look at it, is that each Sith is their own person. They do things their way. They are responsible for themselves. And through power, they are no longer weak. They are never the victim. They are never beholden to someone else if they get strong enough. Contrast this with, well, no, I don't want to contrast everything. I would say contrast this with certain mentalities today that are kind of pathetic. yeah, I'd rather be a Sith or have a Sith mindset than be like those people who are always like, oh, I'm powerless. Other people need to help me. A Sith is, no, no one needs to help me. I will get my own power and I will settle my problems my way. At least that's how I've always seen it. They don't, didn't, well, no, again, I'm getting off topic and going into some that I'm going to talk about later, but that's the Sith Code, and it's not as evil as you would think based on how they're usually portrayed in the movies. It actually sounds very human, or at least I think it does. And this is one of the things I love about the Sith is their code is kind of interesting. The Sith are a meritocracy in a weird way. They are a very warped meritocracy, but a meritocracy nonetheless. The best thrive. I mean, I think you could use the word best very vividly or debatably. They like as long as you are powerful and skilled, you will do well. But you also have to have a degree of treachery and cunning in mind because it's a cutthroat business, a bit like big business. Only the most cutthroat people do well. Can't have a heart in this business. Too expensive. And you progress if you are willing to do what is necessary. And for a Sith, a lot of things are necessary. You mean you have to be willing to stab your own friend in the back to do better than him. Another thing is anyone can join if they have the capability. Like if you're force sensitive and you have ambition, you will do well among the Sith. But it requires that you have be force sensitive. Otherwise, you're just a soldier that they'll use or a pawn they'll use. Unless they befriend you or you hold some significant value to them, then you have some place in their schemes where they want to see you survive. Maybe. And one thing I've kind of liked about the Sith, especially if they're honest with you, I mean, I think they're more honest than the Jedi, but you know where you stand with them. Like some Sith, unless you have their respect, they have no problem talking down to you. They make no illusions or delusions about what you are to them. They give you no illusion of grandeur. If you are not worth something, they tell it to your face, which I kind of like that. I like bluntness. Now, unless they're deceiving you or messing with you or manipulating you, then they will not be straightforward with you, but hey, that's the business. Again, you can't have a heart in it. And yeah, that's about it. Like they are a weird kind of meritocracy, which is something I like about them. They are like it's not the privileged who do well. I mean, the privileged who probably may have a chance of doing well, but not very much. I mean, you could have a dad who's a powerful Sith, but you go through the same rigorous process he did, and if you don't do well, you're screwed. It doesn't matter how powerful your dad is or your mommy is, you're screwed if you're not willing to. If you are neither incapable, or if you're neither capable or willing to do what is needed to be done, you're screwed. And I like that the weak and the weasels of the world have less of a chance of thriving, unless they're a good manipulator. Then the weasels will do very well. Similarly to Mandalorians and bounty hunters, the Sith also have something else I love about them. They have style. Like, you look at the Jedi, and they have no style. They are styleless. They are classless. Then again, they're the equivalent of monks, so I don't know what I was expecting. I mean, look at them. They wear brown. To quote Vader reviews, you know what else is brown? A turd. Do you want to be dressed like a turd? Because I don't. I mean, their clothing and armor is usually striking. I mean, they can probably be evil, but they look good doing it. Which is, if you're going to be evil, you might as well have a good look for it. Unlike the Jedi, there are less restrictions on what each Sith can do. Like, well, for one, they have hotter people in their organization. Look at Talon, for example. You can have wives or lovers. Multiple if you are so inclined, although I have to admit that part's kind of unappealing because one's hard enough. Multiple probably makes the barrel of a gun look friendly. Unlike with the Jedi, there's no age restriction. Doesn't matter how old you are when they recruit you. If you are force sensitive and they think you can be a good Sith, or you have the capacity to be a good Sith, they will take you into their organization, they will train you, and they will see if you survive or not. And contrast that with the Jedi, who they take them very young so they can mold them and indoctrinate them at a young age. And the last thing is they were allowed to feel emotional attachments. The Jedi, by contrast, are very robotic. They want to be emotionless. They want no attachments. Like, there's someone that they sound like psychopaths, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah, I wouldn't trust them. But yeah, that's about it I can really say. Like, you have more freedom as a Sith than as a Jedi, which is something I also like about them. Free will and human nature are more present among the Sith. I mean, they don't deny their humanity. The Jedi, they seem to reject humanity and the things that make us human. They sound like communists, basically. They're all about conformity and all that. The Sith are not. Each Sith is their own man. Um, they're allowed to do their own thing. Also, something that I wish they would have done more in the original expanded universe was, I think a Sith, like this is an idea that the Old Republic stuck in my head, and from what little I've seen of the lore of the EU on the Sith, or most of it anyway, is that there was a capacity for a Sith to be good or evil. I mean, it wasn't mandatory for them to be evil. I argue that the Sith weren't evil themselves. Well, I should know I'm saying that for later, but you had the capacity to either be good or evil. What was important was just trying to make your way in the Sith world, building yourself up, getting more power, getting more control, getting more, well, yeah, just control of your life, I guess, and surroundings, and building up some of your own. Whereas the Jedi, they are servants. They surrender their own free will and their own humanity, and they surrender their own place in the world to be decided by others. Usually the council, but and at least with the Sith, the only person they had to answer to, and they had a very big government, was a Dark Council, which is just like a Jedi Council, but more fun. They had personality. Well, that's another thing. Sith have personality. The Jedi not so much. And at least when a Sith does something messed up, they aren't self-righteous about it. No, that's all I want to say on that. As I mentioned before, I believe the Sith had a capacity for good or evil. Um, I don't think the Sith were necessarily evil themselves. I think the dark side of the Force was evil, and that definitely influenced them. But the Sith way of life didn't require you to be an evil person. It didn't require you to be malicious, like Sidious. I think Sidious was just bad to the core from the day he was born. I mean, he killed his own family, for example. Not all Sith did that. Some Sith adopted children, some freed slave. One guy, Malgus, freed a slave from captivity from her previous master, or the master she had before him. Took her as a slave, and she became his wife eventually, and he loved her. So I would say they are not evil. They are like it's kind of like with the Mandalorian. It depends on the Sith individual you're dealing with. Most of them could kill you. You never know. It's like dealing with the Joker. They could kill you. You just don't know what the result will be. The Sith, they attract really some interesting characters. I mean, throughout the centuries or millennia they've been around, they have attracted a plethora of people. No, even more than that. They've attracted legions of interesting characters, both from the light and the dark, and or those who just came to the dark outright. But when you had people like Darth Revan, Malak, Malgus, Mar, Plagueis, Vader, Talon, all of them were very iconic, both in personality and the way they looked, and in the stories they were in, and how their lives turned out, or how the course of their lives played out. Which that was something I always found fascinating. Another one interesting thing about the Sith is their conflict with the Jedi. I think their interactions made both sides respectively worse off. I mean, it wasn't just like their conflict was both of morality and ideological, in my opinion. And the funny thing is, the Sith and the Jedi started out as the same organization at one point. Originally, they were the Jedi. Then the Jedi became the Jedi. The Jedi had a splinter faction that wanted to study the dark side of the Force. The Jedi attacked them, and then years later, another schism occurred. And survivors of this second schism were exiled to Korriban, and the only memory that the Sith had after that was that are these dark side Force users who created the first, who would eventually have descendants that become the Sith. All they remembered was they were cast out unfairly by their brethren, who weren't looking at them objectively. They were just looking at them with, oh, these guys are evil, they need to be dealt with. So the Sith probably had this idea of the Jedi being very unreasonable. This also caused the Sith to have an unreasonable hatred of them. Well, not unreasonable, but very non-negotiable. And they both became very radical as a result. So they were bad for each other. It was a very toxic relationship. The Jedi were bad for the Sith, and the Sith were bad for the Jedi. They brought out the worst in each other, and they caused destruction with each of their conflicts, both on worlds and the galaxy at large. And yeah, I still like if you tell me who was worse, I would say the Jedi because they are kind of self-righteous, and I hate hypocritical and self-righteous people. And there's also a conflict of just ideas of how things should be done, how the galaxy should go, how they should be living their lives. This is basically like two religions meeting each other. The Jedi were a religion, the Sith were a religion, and they met, and they were not compatible. But instead of just leaving each other alone, they went to where the other one was, respectively, and started shit. And they made life worse for everyone as a result. Lastly, one more thing I liked about the Sith when reading about them was they had a couple similarities to the Mandalorians. I mean, both started out as alien races, but then they later incorporated other races into their organization. I mean, the Tong became the Mandalorians, and they would take anyone from any species eventually into their ranks. And the Sith started out as the Sith aliens. Then the Dark Jedi exiles came to them, and they eventually became what is known as the Sith Order, or the Order of the. Well, no, it's the Jedi Order, and well, yeah, no, the Sith basically. Both suffered atrocities at the hands of the Jedi and the Republic, which, yeah, no, the Republic and the Jedi really screwed them up or over repeatedly on multiple occasions. Mainly the Sith, because they actually did commit atrocities against the Sith on repeated occasions, despite the fact they're supposed to be the good guys. And both have a form of egalitarianism because the Sith, like I said before, the Sith really don't care where you come from as long as you have the Force capabilities and you have ambition. That's about it. They don't really care what your gender, your species, or your race is. It's just, I think the stigma against aliens in the empires they created was more had to do with people in the empire, not the Sith Order. It was more of like Imperials, like non-Force user Imperials. Some of them really are very alien hating, like very racist. The Sith are not as much so, although some of them probably did have prejudices against aliens, depending on the individual Sith, because it's like when you deal with an average person in real life. Everyone has a prejudice or two. So, in Star Wars, you probably would have found one who did not like aliens among the Sith. The problem was, there were aliens who could become Sith. So, and the irony is, the Sith started out as aliens, and this also became something of a problem for both the Sith Empire and the Republic. This was something they pointed out in the Sith Inquisitor storyline of the Old Republic was, the optional line was, the Empire's illogical intolerance for aliens will be its undoing, just like the Republic's unwavering acceptance of aliens makes them bloated and inefficient. There's no perfect way for them to go about things. So, yeah, that's about it. again, these are just some things about the Sith like I started this yesterday and I thought, this would make a good video. So, and like I've said before, I know I say the words interesting and fascinating ad nauseum, but I really do think that about the Sith. They are very compelling, in my opinion, and it's a shame that we didn't get a Sith game. Well, if we did, I don't know about it. But a game that dealt with the Sith and the moral complexities of what it's like to be under the Sith doctrine. Like you could have, like I don't know if they did that with the Old Republic, but that would have been a very ripe ground for that kind of story, where you would just see someone on Korriban at the Academy being brought up. You see him having to deal with just treachery at every turn, never knowing who to trust, and seeing if he becomes a good man, a bad man, or somewhere in the middle. That's something that I would like, especially for a video game. Like that was the only downside of the Old Republic was it introduced that idea, but it wasn't in a single player game. And like to go back to the whole Sith not being completely evil, they had a capacity for good or evil. Like they could do good things. They could save a life if it was someone they cared about. So, or they could do good deeds if it was in their interest, or they had reason to do so. So that could have been a story they could have told, and I don't think we'll ever get that story now with Disney running things. But hell with that. Forget that nonsense. I think this is where I'll end the video. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day, and remember the game was rigged from the start.